This is Ralph K. Ginorio. Give me a few minutes and I'll suggest an idea worth considering. At what point do we complete the equation that if you de-Christianize a society, you shouldn't expect the people to behave like Christians anymore? Our republic, our constitutional republic, comes from a discrete historical tradition, a tradition like no other. Not any other civilization on earth, not Eastern, not Southern, produced liberal democracy, what we would call our constitutional republic. Our republic comes from the heritage of ancient Athenian Greece, the Roman Republic, and most of all, the medieval society that was called Christendom, defined by its very Christianity. Now, for 1,000 years, the Christian faith in Europe did not produce a large-scale republic. But of all the societies on earth, in the 1500s, European Christian civilization modernized. Part of that modernization was the destruction of a unitary religious understanding. In other words, of the Universal Catholic Church. The Protestant Reformation maintained Christian values throughout Europe, but those values became diverse and heterodox, not unitary, not easily censored. The church was weakened, for good and for ill, in the 15, 16, and 1700s. And at first, that weakening was exploited by the kings of Europe, the autocrats like Louis XIV, who were inspired by the Chinese emperors. The Chinese emperors were the sons of heaven. They had absolute power. They lived in a forbidden city with a lifestyle like no other, because the Chinese emperor, as the son of heaven, had as their goal the understanding of the ever-changing natural balance. And their job was to harmonize the Chinese Empire, the Middle Kingdom, Zhongguo, with that ever-changing constant balance. So the Chinese emperor may have had his feet on the ground, but his head had to be in the clouds. Made sense from a Confucian Chinese understanding. Louis XIV of France imports that into an individualistic and Christian society, replacing the Forbidden City with the palace at Versailles, and instead of being the son of heaven, he becomes Le Roi Soleil, the Sun King. It's all about him. Everything revolves around him. New heliocentric understanding of the universe. But these autocrats, these absolute monarchs, are not the final word in European Christian civilization. Because the Enlightenment, the philosophy that all people can learn reason, erupted in response to this power grab by the kings. And it is the Enlightenment philosophies of John Locke that said that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. That inspired Jefferson to write his Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, inspired Americans to risk their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors in the great War of Independence, producing our constitutional republic. But such a republic requires people who can regulate themselves. De Tocqueville wrote that what was amazing about America and Americans was that hundreds of miles away from any courthouse, most of the people, most of the time, did the right thing. And he ascribed the reason for that as the simple Christian faith of the American frontiersman. That simple Christian faith has caused us to be courageous when self-interest would have us be cowardly, has caused us and inspired us to seek out hardship when luxury would have been a normal goal for most people. We have risked, we have striven, we have worked to maintain our freedom and to free others around the world for the last 100 years. This is not an easy thing. Slackers, serfs, people who are serving nothing but their self-interest are not capable of the kind of freedom that we have, that we take for granted. Freedom can only exist if people self-regulate. Now, the Christian faith is not the only faith on earth that inspires good moral self-control. But while all Christians have certainly not practiced such good moral self-control, understand the default setting of Islamic society harkens back to the AD 600s, to the life of Muhammad and the writing of the original Quran. What was normal then is normal within a Quranic understanding of the world. The Buddhists and the Hindus accept that the power structure, which include princes and tyrants, is part of the inevitable suffering of this vale of tears, as a Buddhist might say, or is a reflection of the natural order where enlightened souls rule over the undesirables and the untouchables. Only the Christian faith, rooted in this intangible and unsatisfiable standard of love, produced ultimately a society that was self-regulating and moral and free. And since the 1960s and 70s, our lovely, wonderful elites have tried to de-Christianize us with ever-increasing success. And the fact that the Christian church is divided, not just between Catholic and Protestant, but between the heresies of liberation theology on the one hand and fundamentalism on the other, there is no organized Christian answer. So the American people have been rapidly de-Christianized. Should it surprise anyone that they choose sloth over industry, that they choose immediate sexual satisfaction over fidelity, that they choose the good of their own generation over the good of their children and grandchildren? At some point, as the lovely Jeremiah Wright would say, the chickens will come home to roost. If this society is successfully de-Christianized, it will not be capable of maintaining its freedom. Its citizens will not be worthy to make their own choices, and we will be tyrannized and enslaved. I'm not saying what form of Christianity. I'm saying it needs to be a form of Christianity, some Christian awakening that calls people to the notion that there is a higher purpose than self, and that purpose is not atheistic communism or communitarianism or socialism. It's love. Love of neighbor, love of truth. Think on it and be well.